Hey guys, it's me Adam here for another one of these set review videos, and it's Midnight Hunt Part 3, Part 3. Anyway, we're having a look at lands and green cards in this one. So I hope you're all enjoying me doing these set reviews in this format, especially now. And we'll get right into some of these great spicy cards I'm interested in talking about here today. So yeah, by the way, we make lots of great content here on the channel, and if you haven't already, please think about subscribing to the channel. It really helps out the channel grow and make more great content for you. And as our analytics show, 95.6% of people aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you aren't subscribed to the channel, do please think about subscribing to the channel. Alright, so let's have a look at some of the green cards from the set now. Consuming Blob, nothing too explosively exciting, but 5 mana, essentially you get like a Tarmogoyf style effect where its power is equal to 1 plus the number of types in your graveyard, and then at the beginning of your end step you create a ooze creature token with its power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard with toughness equal to +1, so you make another one. So it's like you get these two like Tarmogoyf style effects from this 5 mana body, and it is a token, so that can be relevant in some decks, especially if you've got Populate and other effects like that. There are things, and you do get it right away, or sort of right away, essentially, unless somebody goes and kills it or whatever, but still you're getting 2 bodies for the price of 1, which is still, pretty decently statted bodies and whatnot for the most part. So I do think that it can see some play in some Graveyard Matters decks, because you do want to get extra value, and it'll just keep making bodies for you, and if it dies you can just get it back and keep making more bodies with it. So I do think you could see some play in some decks, though it's not the most powerful card from the set though. Primal Adversary, this is interesting, another one of the adversary cycle. I think the green one's pretty okay as well. 3 mana for a 4/3 trample. Enters the battlefield, we pay 1 and a green any number of times, gets that many counters, and then we make that many target lands into 3/3 wolves. Look, I don't know whether you want to animate your lands like that, but in certain decks it is okay, because in certain decks you can protect them, or they get bigger, or they have other different things. It's not the best, but again, it's not the worst. So I was expecting the green one just to be insane, because green's got so many insane cards, but it's just fine. Again, a lot of these adversary cards I think can see some amount of play in the format, so I would consider it in some decks that want to manipulate their lands especially, or you just don't care if your lands go to the graveyard sometimes, because if you getting them turned into 3/3s, you're probably getting them into combat for some reason, so you want to be able to get them back, essentially. Okay, I'm going to say Ren and 7 is probably alright as well in the set. 3 mana for a 5 mana for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. It mostly goes into landfall strategy. I'm not going to read the whole thing this time with this one. I'm just going to say essentially the top 4 lands is your tick up, and the rest go to the graveyard. 0 to get any number of land cards from your graveyard back to the battlefield. -3 to get a essentially 5/5 when he's out for the first time, but it's equal to the number of lands you control, so it can get bigger. -8, it's ultimate. permanent cards in your graveyard and in your hand. You return all cards from your graveyard to your hand. You have an emblem. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. It's okay, like, if you're graveyard centric and graveyard matters. Again, I think you can see some play, but it is a planeswalker or a non-creature, at least in your mostly like graveyard creatures matter style decks. So do be aware of that, but again, like, just being able to fill your graveyard and be able to get the lands that you do need to fuel what you're doing is pretty decent. So it really is quite good. Augur of Autumn, it's essentially like a Courser of Crufix effect. 3 mana, 2/3. You look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands from the top of your library. Has Coven, so if you have 3 different powered creatures, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. It's not like much better than like what's his name? Vizier of the Menagerie, but except you get to play lands like Courser of Crufix. You don't gain the life. Life gain's okay, not amazing, but it's there. But again, I think it's just on the same level as Vizier of the Menagerie, but Vizier of the Menagerie, I think, is like 4 or 5 mana, I think. So this being stapled onto this smaller casting creature, I do think it can see some play in some decks, but again, it's hard to say. Maybe mostly like land heavy decks where, like having the access to the top card of your library means that you have access to more cards and whatnot, especially if you can play 2 lands per turn and things like that. But if your deck is mostly creatures and land, I don't think it's too bad of a card to put in because, again, it will give you a lot of advantage in both sections. So I do think it will be worth it. I think Tolvard's Huntmaster essentially is a Grave Titan style effect, and it's not too bad of a effect. I think this is much more relevant in green, so it's a 6 mana, 4 and double green, 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, we create 2/2 wolf creature tokens. It has Daybound and Nightbound, so if you can flip it, it turns into Tolvalor's Pack Leader, a 7/7, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you create those 2/2 wolves. You can also pay 4 mana, 2 and double green, and have one of your werewolves fight another creature you don't control. So yeah, that's pretty good. It's much more relevant, as I said, in green, because again, in green you can ramp like crazy into this thing, get it out there much quicker and much easier than what you can in most black decks with Grave Titan, like unless you are in green and black. But it's much more relevant because again, it might turn into a 7/7 sometimes, but otherwise it's just a 6/6 that makes 2/2/2s. That's not that amazing, so it is okay. Maybe some token decks would want it, but it's mostly just a werewolf card because you really want to be focused on being able to flip it somehow. So you want all the Daybound, Nightbound stuff, but it's still a pretty good thing if you can find other ways to get around the Daybound, Nightbound thing. Unnatural Growth, I think it's quite good. Enchantment, 5 mana enchantment, 1 and 4 green. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. It's pretty good because you can, when you're attacking, you've got double power and double toughness, so your stuff's harder to kill and it's going to do more damage. And then when you're not attacking, when you're on the defensive, again, you can block more damage and protect yourself more. So I think it's all round okay. I don't think it's like the most amazing thing ever. I still think it's pretty good though. And can see some play in some decks. You really need to be heavy on creatures. And this is a non-creature, again, creature deck. So it being worth it is like hard to say. But I still think it's pretty good. But I think that's about it. There's a whole bunch of commons and uncommons that are here that I don't really think are that amazing. Dryas Retreat, kind of a little bit interesting, but not that amazing because like it's another like regrowth style effect. It's got flashback. That's okay, but yeah, nothing too amazing. There's some interesting werewolves certainly for a werewolf deck, but I strictly think most of the other werewolves and whatnot are strictly werewolf deck cards. So we'll move on to having a look at some of the lands. Alright, so I mostly don't want to talk about too many of the lands. I mostly want to talk about this new quote-unquote slow land cycle. I can show you all of them on the page here, but we're just going to talk about them in general as I scroll down through here and talk about them. Deserted Beach, so blue, white, and Hunted Ridge, black, red, Drowned Farmyard, green, white, Rockfall Vale, green and red, Shipwreck Marsh, green and blue and black. Sorry. So all of these quote unquote slow lands, I was thinking about them for a little while when they first come out, and I was thinking, how good are they? And I was like a little bit like thinking, like, are these just like, like they're the opposite of fast lands essentially. They don't have types, which is a little bit worse, but besides that, like, they're not that bad. Like literally, like, if you think about normal games of Commander when you're coming to play, the only time that these cards are bad are on the first like 1 or 2 turns of the game. Those are the only times these are bad. Like, and that's a very small percentage of the games in our side of the format. Now, if you're playing CDH, that's completely different, because in CDH, the first like 2 or 3 turns are probably the only turns that you're gonna get. So that they're the opposite in that format. But in our format, because like, yeah, sure, turn 1, like, how many turn 1 plays are you gonna have? So playing this on turn 1 is like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe I'll miss out on playing Soul Ring in some decks, but most of the time playing it on turn 1, if you absolutely have to, if you've got no other choice and other options, is one of the worst ones. But even then, it's like, well, do I have any other 1-drops in my hand? No. Okay, well, it was irrelevant that I played this on turn 1 and it came in tapped. So then it's untapped for the rest of the game as well, so that's not that big of a deal. And then if it's on turn 2, maybe you still don't have a turn 2 play. But again, those are the only times that they're bad. Like turn 3 onwards, for the most part, these are going to come in untapped, and like 90+% of the time, that's when you're going to have these lands, because they're not fetchable, which is a slight downside, but it's also a slight upside, because it's like, well, like, unless they're in your opening hand, which is not going to happen very much, like, because you've got 99 cards, or, yeah, whatever, 99 cards, so that happening is a very slim chance again, so I just don't think that whole, entering tapped is that big of a deal. Otherwise, they're just, like, non-typed dual lands. They're basically as good as the crowd lands for the most part, or the battle bond lands, whatever we want to call them. So I think these are really good lands, and I think everyone wants to run them if you can find space. Well, you should be able to find space in your decks for them, because I think they're better than like pain lands or like filter lands, because you don't have to worry about like the colorless mana and trying to filter into the colors that you need. Like, sometimes that is relevant-ish, but not very much. That's why you have so many duels anyway, is to get the right colors, or whatever, is why you run so many specific basics. Is if your deck is very heavy white or very heavy blue, it's like, well, clearly you're gonna run more of plains than islands or whatever in that deck. So yeah, like, I just see these as auto include in most decks. Like unless you like really need like some other land. I think these color pairs though are the color pairs that have the most duels, and we'll have to wait and see if they print the other half of the cycle kind of. Maybe they will soon-ish. They actually printed the MDFC flip lands, or whatever you want to call them, almost straight away. So that was all right. I can't remember cycles that they reprinted the Scryland cycle. They reprinted the Shockland cycle. They reprinted basically the other half of the whatever it was it Shadows over Innistrad that had the if you reveal one from your hand, or was it another set? I think it was actually Shadows over Innistrad lands that you reveal a swamp or an island or whatever, and it comes in untapped. So like the flip lands. They also printed the other halves of those very quickly. So I'd be high on the possibility that they will possibly reprint or print the other half of this cycle fairly soon. Maybe in Crimson Bowl. I don't know. Maybe in this next year's set very soon, because I don't think they want half of a cycle going into standard and then the other half of the cycle not going into standard and whatnot. You've got to look at it like that. And this is the thing as well, like, pick them up while you can, because these are going to be cards that people will play in standard. I don't think they're going to see play in modern. They're too slow and they're not typed. But they might see play in Pioneer and whatnot and things like that. So it's one of those things where these are going to be heavily sought after and whatnot by people in the games and whatnot. And these are one of the best cards in the set. So obviously they're worth picking up. But anyway, that's pretty much it that I have to say about the set for green and lands for today, except for these basics, or these full out basics are so pretty. But yeah, tell me what you guys think about some of these very pretty lands and some of these other very pretty lands. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below, and I'll be sure to bring you more set reviews. Last one's coming out soon-ish, so hopefully that will be up in the next couple days. But I'll see you then. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?